Episode 155, little later in the week, Saturday, hot water history. Richard, what's going on? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Charlie. What a great feast we celebrate today of a pious American woman, St. Elizabeth Ann Seton, who God confronted in the middle of her life with an amazing calling to both religious life after she thought she was settled as a married and faithful woman, not just to be a convert from Episcopalianism to Catholicism, but to lead in many ways a revolution in education and spirituality in the United States. And it is we who are all, for the best of it, beneficiaries of our Catholic school education that we should thank in large part Elizabeth Ann Seton for her diligent work in that regard.
When was she alive? I don't
Oh,
know. To be honest, I don't know much about her.
end of the 18th century, beginning of the 19th. Yeah.
Cool.
hmm
How was your New Year's?
It was fine. I was celebrating finally passing the Series 7 exam.
Yeah, let's
So
go.
yeah. It was, I have to say again, of the several that I took, this was the hardest version. And so
I
I
thought you
think,
said that about the last one.
yeah, it was harder than the previous one.
Yeah,
They got more and more challenging. I don't know if that's built into what the examining body, I won't mention at the moment, does with their work, but I passed. So yeah, it's, I'm happy about it.
congrats. I'm
Yeah.
super excited for 2025. Man, I started off the New Year's really sick. So I've been just taking down these cough drops like crazy. But oh, and my heat went out again. I told you about that, so that was tough. But we got
Mhm.
that fixed. So
Charlie has not impressed his slumlord yet. He has not wooed him.
it's been a bit of a saga with the getting the temperature above 65
I
here.
saw the slumlord, who's the owner of your building, was posting something anti-ginger. I don't.
I
Is
think
there?
that's it. Yeah.
Maybe that's it.
Yeah.
Wait till it's anti-Catholic, then I'll get mad.
Right.
hmm
But today we wanted to talk about the reaction to all the craziness in the New Orleans area. And I think this always comes up with an event where there's some lack of security or security breach. There's always the side that says, look, we could have done more. This is why libertarianism will never work. And then there's the side that there's the libertarians argument, and we'll get into some where it's saying, no, this is actually evident that all of the money and resources that are being taken from us and sold to us as protection, it actually still doesn't work.
Yes. And one might expect that of a progressive who finds the state and the government as the panacea and solution to all problems that vex society. However, when it comes from supposedly conservative sources, and then they want to get cheeky or are then defaming and calling out libertarians slash ANCAPs. And I actually, more so than ever, maybe the new year has brought a greater realization to me. I am, we have done this before and we had addressed this, but I am completely eschewing the libertarian title and identifier.
Oh, you're leaving it in 2024?
Yeah, 2024 was, I don't mind being still called libertarian.
You're transitioning. You're changing.
25, I'm going to get annoyed if people continue to call me simply a libertarian.
You're changing your pronouns.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, my descriptors are no longer libertarian slash anarcho-capitalist. It's simply anarcho-capitalist and Catholic, and may I enter the kingdom of heaven with such labels.
Do you want to talk about the differences more, or do you want people that to already know that?
No, just simply I think when we're addressing the titles and labels of libertarianism, it's just too inclusive of people who And I should bring up that Michael Malice is being interviewed or has been interviewed. The full text of that and the full recording of that interview with John Stossel, a former ABC News correspondent, 2020 persona, who's a staunch libertarian and right on, again, 90 to 95, 97.5% of the issues, and gives great perspective in a lot of his videos and shorts, and his former advocacy of extraordinarily limited government, as he had his own show on Fox Business called Stossel. And of course, Fox had to get him out of there pretty quickly, along with Kennedy and others. But the term libertarian is too inclusive. It is too inclusive as an ideology of a permissive minimalism that, in many ways, not just opens itself up to critiques from the right and certainly the left about the governmental or the need for governmental response, because it's not consistent as it ought to be. It's not fully consistent. And it, Charlie, this reminds me analogously of when people talk about the what the Second Vatican Council has done and the Novus Ordo has done to Catholicity and the principle of lex orandi, lex credendi, as we praise, so we live, or so as we believe. Um, so when we allow for a libertarianism that is permissive of or allows for a, a smidgen of government or government to continue to be extant and rule as a sovereignty over our lives, always and everywhere to the diminution of our liberties, rights, and freedoms, then I can understand why you have Jack Posobiec and your James Lindsay's of the world. To a degree, they're not, they themselves are not, let's not call them ideological purists either. But it does open the libertarian side and minimalist or minarchist side, excuse me, open up to, I think, valid criticism that your principle of what government is as a monopoly of violence, you can't at the same time say, well, let's just have a little bit of a monopoly of violence. You see, you have it again reminds me of, if you want the full, authentic exercise and devotion of the faith of Catholicism, you don't simply eschew or see as some blight on the church the old liturgy. You go all the way. Why accept any inferior replica? You
Yeah.
want the real thing. It's one of my central arguments when I converse and engage in discourse with Protestants. Why do you want a less than authentic, less than pure church? Now, what I mean by pure there, I don't mean sinless. I mean that it's the actual body of Christ, one Catholic apostolic, which through its power vested in it, in her, by our Lord himself, by the second person of the Trinity, carries out the work of salvation and set forth, for example, the canon, which it deems as inspired, and from which we gain an assurance of the true faith. The totality of revelation, St. Thomas Aquinas said, can be understood in Scripture and in Revelation, but of course we need a solid and unerring interpreter to guide us and help us out. That doesn't mean that we are to eschew and divorce ourselves from our individual intellects and attempting to, in our life of faith, attempting to dive deeper into that, but to be assured of its authenticity, to be assured of the true seed from which this vine of wisdom or revelation that you are asserting exists. We have to have the church there to do that. And so too with and in this show, people should realize that they're never going to get a lack of comparisons with the life of the church and the life of a true living and I would argue most efficacious life aside and apart from and untainted by the state. That those two things should go together, as we've said by this time, what, about a million times on our 100 or 255 episodes, right?
155,
100. Well,
but
eventually 255.
sure.
I keep looking forward. Uh, so, but yeah, the 155 episodes. But and that's where I'm coming from. So, as we go through some of these messages that we're calling libertarians, such as Dave Smith or Clint Russell or Bob Murphy or Tom Woods, people who are certainly in our camp and on the anarcho-capitalist side of things, the there's a shred of truth to what the Lindsays and the Posobiec say, but not one that is going to in all is at all injurious or detracts from a full libertarianism that ultimately, in a principled way, concludes with anarcho-capitalism.
Let's pull up the tweets.
Yeah.
Let's start with the original one. Jack Poso. It seems that the basic bitch libertarian principles were not enough to stop the New Orleans attack.
Right. And maybe as I look at his tweet yet again, it's hits me that I'm giving them too much credit on the what would we call it still? Would you call Poso alt-right? I don't think so. He's more America first, right? He's more MAGA, wouldn't you say, as an identifier? Maybe
Uh,
I'm giving them too much credit in the sense that this is rather a stupid quip that
America First Right's a good
yeah,
way
yeah.
of putting it.
Okay. So the point being here that, well, if we really had just there's this all it's almost comical. It is risible that they bring up this idea that, well, now that we have someone who's a good steward of government resources that have been, of course, usurped from the productive class and dedicated to the benefit of the lives and directing lives and ensuring the protection of Americans. Well, now we can do this. It's this false canard that they continue to trot out that or if only we have a good steward line and the good steward line therefore becomes an attack on libertarian principles as a whole or the non-aggression principle as being weak-kneed or feckless or lacking any type of backbone or substance to it. So here, why don't you go ahead and read Dave's retort?
Dave says it seems that the complete and total abandonment of the principles of liberty didn't stop the attacks either.
Now that's a great response, right? So it's not as though all of a sudden with the weeks leading up to this terror, well, yeah, let's assume it's a terrorist attack, okay, or this violent attack of this guy driving into, oh, by the way, a guy from who's in the military from Fort Hood, where the U.S. military has and the U.S. Army has its Psych Ops division headquartered, where Timothy McVeigh of the OKC bombing and the other guy also the in the Las Vegas attack with the Cybertruck also trained at Fort Hood.
They've got a good farm system. They got a good
Oh boy.
Triple A team at Fort Hood.
Well, it's funny you say farm system because even the CIA calls its training course or training regimen and the place where they do it the farm, if
I
I'm
didn't
not.
know. I didn't know that.
Yes. Yeah. So they're all these guys have this same origin, which is rather amazing. And it is right for people to comment upon the odd similarities that exist between Timothy McVeigh, who supposedly orchestrated the OKC bombing in 1992, I think was the Murrah building. Or was it 93? I can't remember. And then these guys who Apparently the guy who carried out the attack in Las Vegas with the Cybertruck at the Trump Hotel was he insured. I don't know if it was through. Forgive me because I have a near complete ignorance of these things, and I'm thankful to have no knowledge of them or little to no knowledge of them. By the use of cyanide or something that he had used as a means by which to commit suicide before the bombing, it ensured that his dental records would never be recovered. That's the reporting. Well, that seems odd.
Yeah.
Also, the when Timothy McVeigh was put to death, I believe it was in 93. Correct me if I'm wrong there on the historical record, but there was no autopsy done on the body. Eyewitnesses said that he was still breathing when he was declared dead. These are very odd circumstances that are surrounding what if the narrative that is put forth as the official narrative is to be believed, why not have all of the possible questions and doubts about the legitimacy and the real guilt of these individuals just put it out there for the world to see so as to not create such concern about the veracity of their accounts. But again, now someone could argue, well, that's just to be a divergence tactic for and a distraction for theorist minded people like yourself and myself, or the Delling poll. But I don't think it's the case. Just a sloppy work, or again concerns that real modus operandi that just seems to want to never allow the truth to come out. So Dave has this great again quip about before these attacks, it wasn't as if all of a sudden the week before there was this inauguration of libertarianism and that the CIA and NSA and the FBI and local law enforcement all put down their guns and said, well, we got to try this anarcho-capitalist thing and just leave people to the wolves, their version of the wolves, uh, and see what happens. That's not what transpired.
Clint Russell was a little more aggressive.
Ah, mm-hmm.
The FBI and DHS spared no expense in hunting down and jailing every January 6er, except the guy who planted a pipe bomb on video. Their guy, clearly. When they tell you that they need more funding to stop terrorist attacks like the ones today, tell them to shove it up their fucking ass.
Yes, and we are here to say on this podcast officially, shove it up your fucking ass. Keep. But here's where Posobiec is. Let's just extrapolate from his comment. Well, with Trump in there and as a good steward, and the stewards with Tulsi Gabbard as the director of um, national intelligence or something like that. Well, now that we have a good person there, they just need more funding
Right.
to prevent these attacks. But one would have to, if you're going to extend it to its logical conclusion, have to have seen, was there a decrease in funding? Were there less personnel available? Were there less FBI agents? Or, and maybe Posobiec would go, well, look at the FBI. Her nickname is Agent Nosering. It's like this young, obviously inexperienced and ill-equipped African American woman. Well, if there wasn't a DEI initiative under the Obama administration, we'd have an effective FBI. Meanwhile, you have an 82-year-old New Orleans police chief who can't even get up to the podium without help from her underlings, who is uh, that made me think New Orleans is trying to look at Chicago and the new claim that Chicago is the most corrupt place on earth. And the people in New Orleans are saying, oh, no, we gonna get that back. We're gonna get that back. We're gonna show you what corruption's all about. That was my first take there with the 81-year-old grandmother who's the or great grandmother who's the police chief or the police chief of New Orleans. So, but it's not as though there were a lack of resources all of a sudden that allowed this massacre to take place.
And then Spike Cohen, he's right. The libertarian principle of spying on every single person in the USA while simultaneously robbing us to finance and train terrorist groups has failed us again.
Yes, if only we had stopped earlier the funding of terrorist groups. How about the founding of terrorist groups? How about the constant funding of Israel that then diverts, yes, even those funds to propping up terrorist groups that they deem to be existential threats like Hamas and then uh and ISIS itself for for the benefit of Saudi Arabia of all what a tangled web American foreign policy is. Of course, what's caught in that web is the American people, and to think that the construction of such a sinister and decrepit and hellish type of web is not going to have ramifications for people in the domestic sphere. Well, Ron Paul already proved that to be false with such sinister motives and actions. Blowback becomes inevitable. If again, this is all to be believed that, and of course, then you had, I'm sure you saw Charlie, the CNN reporter who just like CNN does, stage the scene of her entering the house of the guy in New Orleans who committed the attacks. You
I
didn't
didn't
see
see it.
that? Oh
No.
my God. It was CNN's really, wow. They are really carrying out and in the worst possible ways, the worst acting possible and the worst scripts possible. Along the lines of when that one reporter liberated the guy from the Syrian prison, and he ended up being one of the prison ward or guards that carried out the worst, some of the most heinous torture activities. Same thing here. She enters the house. It's not cordoned off. It's not restricted. And sure enough, oh, look, the Quran is opened up. There it is. Oh, that's proof. Islamic terrorism again. This is something too that's lost on the Posos of the world, as much as it's totally not within on the radar screen of anyone on the progressive or leftist side. But it's also becomes worse. This is where the Posos, the first America First people, tend to fall very quickly victim to neocon narrative right again. And even on Joe Rogan, you have this guy going on who looks like the love child of Bill Maher and Tony Romo, talking about how he's certain that the Iranians have infiltrated the CIA and FBI and all this crap. So they're ready to they can no one tell that all of this is we got to get back to neocon aggressive Bushism. The very name by itself should eliminate the possibility of its return. But the Bush doctrine of how we have to get out there and take them out, the terrorists at abroad before they attack us at home. The opposite is true regarding blowback. The more we interfere in the lives and the operations of these governments and regimes abroad, and the peoples who are suffering under the yoke of these regimes, whether we're supporting their adversaries and attempting coups, whatever it is, the involvement of the DoD and the CIA and the American military and the military industrial complex always always ends up with the ruination of you and I, the American taxpayer, the American people, and innocent victims thereof.
Spike's got an interesting, I got a little distracted by this. Spike's got an interesting Twitter bio. It ends with
Yes,
mostly
he's
peaceful
Jewish.
Jew, sinner saved by Jesus.
Yeah, he's been pretty open about the fact that he converted to Christianity. I don't
Oh,
know what and then once he talked about that openly, of course, and I will say that I was not so much guilty, but I was involved in trying to get him into the true church and as well as others were attempting to pull him into their inferior replica denominations. So I hope he finds the true light of the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. He's a good man, and I hope that's his end.
Cool.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
Just simply that you didn't need a crystal ball to figure out that with all this talk from James Lindsay and the Posos of the world talking about the woke right, how there's this segment of especially the libertarian leaning right that doesn't quite understand because they're unaffiliated or too theoretical. They're unaffiliated with the real world. They're too theoretical or too stuck to core principles that you have to, of course, support Israel in trying to devastate the Palestinian state or the Palestinian people. You have to uh, you have to operate with uh, a blinding allegiance to Netanyahu and the Zionist regime and all these other things that they consider essential to conservatism or essential to progress and Americanism. And then when these terrorist attacks, or I keep calling them terrorist attacks, let's call them just attacks and tragedies take place, um, and these murderous activities take place, that you could just clearly see that the next line was going to be what Poso and Lindsay go, see, we told you, oh, you egghead libertarians slash, I'll even include our own camp of anarcho-capitalists, are blinded by your ideology to such an extent that you allowed uh, a lack of security to take place. You open the door to terrorist attacks because your lack of seriousness in engaging with the real world. It's an argument only a kindergartner could make, and a dumb one at that. But it was going to be put out there and advanced once something like this occurred, or some things like this occurred.
Reminds me of the Trump episode we did right after the
Okay.
election, where we talked about, at least I talked about being optimistic. We've got all these business guys in there, but also ready to be let down.
Yes.
And I think the letdown's going to come sooner than I probably thought,
Okay.
with the amount of money that I think is just going to be spent strictly based off the tone of the Jack Poso types and the strongest supporters
Yeah, and it's
of,
already off to a bad start because they're
and
pushing
Vivek
Mike.
now.
Yeah, and you're pushing Mike Johnson as Speaker of the House, and I mean, and you're vilifying Thomas Massey. All these America First people are just off on Thomas Massey as this self-serving, uh, self-constructed vigilante for justice, but in reality, he's not Batman. He's not coming to save us. He's just a pawn, and he wants name recognition and all this stuff. Okay, Thomas Massey is the only hero in this whole episode. He's the only hero. Everyone else has, to some extent or degree, been compromised. And there's Thomas Massey standing there saying to the other 534 idiots, I'll call 535 with Trump in there, look, in a Ciceronian way, what we're dealing with is a true existential crisis. And if you don't understand that this is the end of the American Republic and we're staring at the end of the precipice, looking down, and we're saying, well, we could just imagine that taking that leap is going to end up like we're Indiana Jones and Last Crusade, and we're going to step on something solid. And it's just so he's the hero to have him be attacked by certain individuals shows their lack of integrity, principle, and just that they think that this is some sort of partisan electoral game and political game that they have to win at all costs, including selling out their souls.
Yeah. I think the letdown's coming sooner.
I don't,
And
I can't disagree with you. I mean, I'm already let down. So
Right.
how could
But
he?
the
He
big
hasn't even
one.
been inaugurated yet.
The big one.
The big one. Yeah, sure. And
Do you want
perhaps
to?
that's why they let him in.
Right.
Powers that be. They knew to let that. We did talk about the hot potato theory before, and that there might be a recognition by the powers that be, the deep state, the cabal, that, well, if this is all going to shit, do we want a guy who's our establishment guy in there or gal? Huh? And they know they can. It doesn't take any Nostradamus supernatural type of powers of prognostication to come through and say, whoa, I mean, what happens when the stock market falls? Well, what's what's going to be Trump's and the general administration's response? Got to lower interest rates. Yeah, he has that, and there is this, uh, one would call it a fault, idiosyncrasy, something that is quite Trumpian, that he listens to the last powerful voice in the room. So if the last powerful voice in the room is Jared Kushner, or if it's Steve Mnuchin, or if it's Jerome Powell, uh, versus someone like, let's just say Vivek is honorable and trying to trying to do something, or Thomas Massey, if he happens to have ever a meeting again with Trump, or Rand Paul. What's going to be the outcome there? I hope that latter group gets the final say. Just to pull it into American history, Tom Woods was talking about how Trump and George Washington share a unique quality in that regard. And it's pretty obvious from the documentation and evidence that we have that, in a case in point, when the debate raged over the establishment of a national bank and Washington sought the advice and the insights of Jefferson and Hamilton, respectively, what did Washington conclude? He didn't understand necessarily the more complex arguments or assertions or contentions of each individual regarding the possible cronyism that would almost certainly result from a national bank. And so what did he do? He said, well, look, I mean, I talked to Hamilton last. He's at Treasury. I don't, Jefferson's out there. He's Secretary of State, so shouldn't he be just dealing with foreign affairs? I mean, how knowledgeable is he of economics? Of course, at the same time, Hamilton's lying through his teeth and just saying, well, he doesn't include that the central banking system that he establishes under the Bank of the United States is going to be an almost exact copy, facsimile replica of the banking system and financial structure of Great Britain. He doesn't bring that up, but yeah, Hamilton won the day, sadly.
It's a good part of the book.
It is.
Interesting part of the book.
What book is that again, Charlie?
A Twisted History of the United
Our own book,
States.
Twisted History of the United States.
2022 it came out.
Right. Soon to be 3 years old.
Ugh.
Wow.
It's actually 2 years and 6 months today.
Oh, it is. Yes.
So
That's right. Because we
two and a half, two
released
and
it
a half
on July
years.
4th.
2.5 years.
Yeah. So, and I cut you off before we were going to move to our
Oh, I was
next.
gonna I was gonna talk about a town that I was gonna ask you if you want to talk about a town that could use a Thomas Massey type of person.
And you know my answer.
A lot of people.
Yep. Here it is.
Meanwhile in Oak Park.
We go to your gay suburb now.
The people segment. Meanwhile, in Oak Park, we got a couple ones today. We talked only about River Forest last week. We'll talk about the entire state of Illinois first to see so the out-of-staters know what we're dealing with. What new Illinois laws have taken effect in 2025?
Oh, I love this segment. I was hoping we would do this. Yeah.
Pay transparency for jobs, gym membership cancellations made easier, and mobile ID driver's licenses are just a few. In 2025, almost 300 new Illinois or Chicago area laws have gone into effect, including pay transparency for jobs, easier gym membership cancellations, and mobile ID driver's licenses.
Yes, we're good. We're driving the state off a financial cliff, but thankfully I can get out of my lifetime fitness membership with
A,
greater ease.
a bill signed by Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker in 2023 now requires employers with 15 or more employees to include pay scale and benefits information in job postings, a move to provide increased transparency in hiring efforts. Complaints about postings within that salary and benefit information can be filed with the Illinois Department of Labor within 1 year. Illinois is also making it easier for residents in 2025 to cancel gym memberships.
Now, can I pause you just going back to the complaints about the the job that
Job postings.
requires increased transparency in hiring efforts, apparently. Now, what does that mean? HR people who everyone loves, of course, are going to be paid more, or more people in that realm of business are going to be hired, unnecessary realm, by the way, and segment of business are going to be paid more, or more people hired, and thus the actual compensation and benefits for the people who are going to be hired will go down. Is that included in the bill? Is that stipulated too?
No.
Oh, that's all.
Illinois is also making it easier for residents in 2025 to cancel gym memberships, which is just rich coming from JB
JB
Pritzker.
Pritzker.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's troubled by all the gym memberships he's had to cancel. It's JB, you have to realize you don't lose tonnage by just signing up for the membership. You have to actually go to the gym and not stop off at every Burger King and McDonald's on the way there and back.
Now residents can cancel gym memberships via email or on their gym's website, as opposed to having to cancel in person or other methods often found unnecessarily difficult.
If that's the case, can I cancel my citizenship to the state of Illinois?
This was annoying though. I don't think it needed to be a law, but that
Yes,
was having to go in person to cancel is
of course. And then what you would have to also investigate is what state laws allowed for it to be difficult. You see, if it was ubiquitous and inescapable that you went from one gym company like Planet Fitness and it was difficult to get out of the membership, and then you went to LA Fitness and it was equally difficult. Well, what that would seem to imply, well, not even imply, but speak to the operation of, is that there's something going on that allows the gym industry as a whole to make it difficult to out. Because after all, if it was just an operative free market and you could just have whatever gym membership you like, wouldn't LA Fitness or Lifetime Fitness have caught on to the fact that everybody's complaining about how difficult it is to get out of your gym contract? So we're going to make it very easy, and thus, therefore, people would be incentivized to go to that gym. But no, there's got to be something that's allowing them to all make it difficult. And that's
I
just assuming that it is difficult in each and every gym and everywhere throughout the state of Illinois.
right.
I wonder if you went to Gold's Gym or like your little tiny gym. By the way, I see more of them popping up, like these just more storefront kind of.
Garages type.
Yeah. And I can't imagine that they have the same policy wherein it's extremely difficult to, as if you have to get out of a car loan or a contract of that sort.
Another state law now in effect is one allowing residents to have a digital version of their driver's license or state ID instead of a
Okay.
physical one. However, according to CBS News, when required by law or requested by a police officer, one might still have to show a physical ID.
What kind of law is that? It's up to the determination of whether the cop wants you to have it or not as a physical copy, but you can have the digital one. Ugh, welcome to Illinois.
Oh gosh.
Now, I get the sentiment behind the law. However, giving discretion to the police officer in a subjective way makes no sense whatsoever. Because sometimes you leave the home and you're driving, and you're like, oh, I forgot my wallet, or a woman forgot her purse, right? and a license in there. Why should this person have to show up to court? Right?
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
this is similar to a case, just my own circumstance. I got pulled over. I didn't have the updated insurance card, so I have to go to court, even though I have insurance. So I asked the police officer, "Look, I gave you the." He said, "Well, this card is expired." I said, "I know it's expired. The one is it's on my shelf at home. Can you check?" And they're like, "No, we can't do that. You're going to court." Okay, fine. It's like waste the entire day of my life because I have to show you physically that I had insurance at this date, even though I know I obviously do have insurance. I just don't have the updated card. Couldn't you check? I mean, they have a computer system right there. You could simply check insured or not through State Farm. I mean, you're sitting there on the corner on the side of the road for half an hour. They could take 2 minutes to check that. But no.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Despite national turmoil over reproductive rights, our favorite two
Oh, yeah. It's
words.
all reproductive rights, the most Orwellian term ever invented.
In Illinois, a new law prohibits discrimination based on reproductive health decisions, including those related to abortion, fertility treatment, birth control, miscarriage care, or pre or postnatal care. Quote, to anyone who intends to come take away the freedom and opportunity and dignity of Illinoisans, I would remind you that a happy warrior is still a warrior, Pritzker said at a news conference in Chicago after the 2024 general election. You come for my people, you come through me.
No one's getting through you. That is
I think that's
waves of
I think
cellulite
that's
that
the
come.
that's the point. Yeah.
What does that mean?
I don't the happy warrior is still a warrior. That's gotta be framed in
Hmm.
every martial arts gym the around the state.
Yeah.
Similarly, HB 2350 requires Illinois companies that provide insurance to cover annual prostate cancer screenings or cervical smears for all those insured, regardless of gender. In Oak
Whoa,
Park,
whoa, 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 whoa.
yeah, yeah,
Back that
yeah,
up, please.
yeah.
HB 2350 requires Illinois companies that provide insurance to cover annual prostate cancer screenings or cervical smears for all those insured, regardless of gender. Why? How could this is this is crazy. How can you possibly check the prostate of a woman who's claiming to be a man? They don't have a prostate. Or am I going too far afield here? So how could a company
You're
be
just being a
sued?
bit. You're being a bigot. You're being a bigot right now.
I'm again the bigot thing. Yes. Can you imagine a company being sued or a medical provider being sued when a biological woman walks in and says, "You have to, under Illinois law, check my prostate," and the doctor says, "What would you do if you were a doctor at the time?" I go, "Okay, your prostate's fine." Right? I mean, how could you be sued? You don't, you're checking something that is non-existent. You're ordered to check something by law that's non-existent. Okay. You can continue, Charlie.
It's a day off of work. I gotta get Daniel
Oh,
screen.
sure,
Daniel.
sure. Okay. All right.
In Oak Park, catalytic converter thefts are often littered across daily police reports. The Chicago Sun-Times reported in June 2023 that more than 17,000 catalytic converters were stolen from 2019 until then, and the thieves are almost never caught.
So this can't be just in Oak Park. I would assume that's in the city.
That's a good that's a good ask. Chicago, yeah.
Right. Okay. Yes. So
Only
Chicago since
34
2019.
of those reported thefts ended with
Point
an arrest.
point two
0.2.
percent. But the cops need more money, Charlie, to track down those catalytic converter thieves.
But now a new law requires metal or scrap dealers to keep records of the vehicle identification numbers of cars where catalytic converters were removed. It requires these dealers to acquire a copy of a seller's ownership of the vehicle in catalytic converter transactions. This is intended, according to CBS News, to prevent thieves from selling catalytic converters, thus reducing enticement to steal them. It's ridiculous.
Wait, is the VIN number on the catalytic converter? That would be the only means by which you could stop that sort of thing.
Keep
Or
records of the vehicle, of the VIN of cars. Yeah. So if it's removed,
oh, okay. So you're going to punish the people that need a catalytic converter by going to or requiring the dealers who install them after they've been stolen.
right.
Okay. Yeah, great. So that's going to cost people more. Again, the supposed principle of unintended consequences behind laws. You look at laws like these, and within reading a paragraph of them, you realize that it's not unintended consequences. They're causing, in many cases, the problems. They are the genesis of the problems. And of course, the reaction to that is, well, we just need another law to make up for the problems that were created by the previous statute, unending infinite regression that leads to you and me in chains.
Any renters concerned about retaliation from the landlord has a new safeguard too. Pritzker signed the Landlord Retaliation Act, which guarantees that landlords cannot penalize a renter for reporting code violations for living conditions or illegal activity. That means a landlord cannot knowingly increase rent, threaten a lawsuit, or terminate a lease in response. I
In
don't know.
response to what?
I don't know how you would unknowingly increase rent.
Yeah. Well, I just I have no possible reason why, but I'm increasing rent. That's weird because you would say, well, just on a whim, or you could just say out of greed, and that's legal. But if it was somehow connected to the fact that you're increasing rent because you want the renter out because they're causing just I don't know, destruction or disruption in your building, that's illegal. Why wouldn't you
No,
just say
no,
it's
no,
greed?
no, 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 no.
No?
That's not it. No, they're
Okay, I'm
saying
misunderstanding it.
if let's say let's just take a scenario
Oh,
here.
I see. Okay, so if someone complains about the boiler going out over and over again in their apartment,
Yeah,
they have no heat
yeah.
sporadically throughout the winter, and
I
they
I
wake
have
up
no I
shivering.
have this is not me. I have no complaints about this
I'm
place.
just tossing a
This is
scenario.
just a hypothetical.
Yeah, totally tabula rasa here. Has no connection to anyone on this podcast or anyone.
This is not I got no complaints, but
Okay, so you can't.
hypothetically that would be an example if the
Yes,
temperature is sporadically under 65 degrees. This is not have to do with anyone, but
I gotcha. But couldn't you easily interpret that as something else? The guy, the guy says, "You raised my rent because I complained about uh, noise or something like that." And it's really the guy raised his rent because he's not paying rent. You
right.
see?
Yeah, so it's another he said she said
Yes, precisely. And
situation.
it never works out that justice is ever served
So
anymore.
police officers or members of self-insured fire protection districts or spouses of those individuals will now have increased access to mental health therapy services. HB 4460 requires insurance companies to provide coverage. Similarly, a police officer now cannot be fired for a mental or physical disability that is the basis for their benefits application.
Yeah. Uh, okay. Who's footing the bill for all that?
Yet another new law requires businesses that offer a free trial, such as a streaming subscription service, to notify customers at least 3 days before the automatic renewal at a paid rate. This only applies, according to ABC7 Chicago, to subscriptions longer than 15 days. Okay, sweet. So everything's going to be 14 days now. Other new laws include requirements for school districts to provide students at least 20 minutes a week for relaxation activities,
Oh God.
waiving fees for veterans to adopt a dog or cat from an animal shelter, and all state-owned buildings must have an adult changing station.
That's awesome. Oh yeah. No greater line of civilizational decline was than the one you just read.
So, does that include every library?
Yes. State owned. No, it would be state owned, not municipal.
Got it.
Yeah. Adult changing station. Can you imagine trying to change JB Pritzker? You're gonna need a big changing station and
These
a
are be
gigantic dumpster.
some big rooms.
Yep.
The Illinois Municipal League outlines other laws taking effect in 2025 related to the environment, municipal governance, property taxes, public works, and utilities online.
Oh, wonderful. Please don't take us there. Oh, more grant money.
Second one, last one. Park District of Oak Park awarded $600,000 grant. The funds will go toward the renovation of Longfellow Park in 2026. The Park District of Oak Park has received a $600,000 grant related to the Open Space Lands Acquisition and Development Grant from Illinois that will be used to help renovate Longfellow Park in 2026.
Again, Oak Parkers, thank you for voting for JB Pritzker.
Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker's administration awarded $55.2 million in OSLED grants in December 2024 to 100 communities in the state for park development projects.
How many of those went to red districts in Illinois?
Quote, since I became governor, it's been my mission to build stronger, healthier communities across Illinois, Pritzker said in a news release. Through the OSLAD program, we're bringing that vision to life by awarding over $55.2 million to local park projects, expanding green spaces, and creating new recreational opportunities for all.
You gotta love the semantics of all this. Again, the idea is that it's JB Pritzker's money and he's the great benefactor, and oh, the Oak Park individuals and citizens are the beneficiaries.
According to the PDOP news release, OSLAD is a cost-sharing program between state and local governments. It funds acquisition and development for parks and outdoor recreation. Since its establishment in 1986, $640 million has been awarded through OSLAD. Longfellow Park, located at 610 Ridgeland Avenue, has a full court basketball area, tennis courts, and splash pad available in the summer. It was named after the author and poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. A renovation for Longfellow Park, expected in spring of 2026, is part of the PDOP's capital improvement plan. The $600,000 grant will help fund a new playground, splash pad, pickleball courts, and sensory garden.
Wouldn't be Oak Park without a sensory garden.
Quote, we are thrilled and deeply grateful to have been awarded this grant to improve our parks, Jan Arnold, executive director of the PDOP, said in the release. This funding will allow us to enhance the spaces that bring our community together, support health and wellness, and connect people with nature. These improvements represent our ongoing commitment to providing exceptional parks for everyone in Oak Park. That's the segment.
That's the segment.
Meanwhile in Oak Park.
What would have happened if I'd gone for it and just said, no, I'm gay. Meanwhile in Oak Park. That's an
Amen.
episode. Tridentine Brewing.
Go out there, get your beer. Apparently, the energy of this podcast is making the lights flash. I don't know what that is, what the reason for that is, but it's pulsating in here. I tell you,
Yeah.
there's
Talk
an
about
energy.
talk about a company that's gonna have a big 2025. Tridentine Brewing.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say ComEd. No, Trinitarian Brewing. Oh man, 2025 is, and what a fitting year. 1700th anniversary of the Council of Nicaea, which should be, if we had an actual pope, be the occasion to bring in all of the Eastern churches back into full communion. But that's, what is that? Proselytizing. And we don't want to speak of the actual authenticity and superiority of the Catholic faith. Oh, God forbid. So, yeah, there we go. Thanks again, Jorge Bergoglio, leading the charge to further division and yet spouting out claims that he's being truly ecumenical. Oh, how great. Could you imagine if we had a Pope Athanasius? And I'm not talking about me, but a Pope who was actually ecumenical, who could lead that after 1700 years of the Council of Nicaea, using it as the occasion to solve divisions over filioque or resolve questions about and divisions that exist between the Eastern and national churches and the Roman one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. That would be fun. That would be so, after all of the trial, turmoil, sufferances that the church has had to go through, what a great reward at the end of that tunnel, but not going to happen. So, in the meantime, though, until the churches are truly unified, you go ahead and drink your Trinitine brew. And then even afterwards, that would be an occasion to drink even more. So, in other words, just drink as much Trinitine beer as you can. That's where I'm going with it.
Responsibly.
Responsibly, of course. Until then, next time, God bless you, Charlie.
All right,
Peace.
everyone. Take care.